Welcome to a new video in my home automation series, and today I am reviewing this intelligent super gateway from LinknLink. And if you remember, I've reviewed quite a few different motion sensors, temperature sensors, radar sensors from LinknLink, and now they come up with this model, this box, basically, which is like a local controller for their smart home systems. But it's not really just a local home controller, because they managed to put an impressive amount of technology and features into this, relatively small box. And since I'm started playing around with it, I'm starting to like it more and more, because I'm, discovering new reasons or new scenarios how I can use this device. And actually, I do have an idea what would be the best use case for this particular device, but I'm just going to mention this at the end of the video once we discuss all the features. I'm not going to go into in-depth details for everything that this device offers, because I think we could be sitting here for hours, and probably this review is still going to be quite long anyway. But I'm hoping to give you a good overview of what this does. And when I first heard about it, I didn't have a really good concept what it would be good for. And the name's Intelligent Super Gateway felt a little bit like a bit of a marketing overreach. But actually, I don't think it is, because again, there is a lot of punch in it, and it's definitely worth reviewing and also considering, even if you don't have LinknLink, but you want to run a mix of different systems with Home Assistant and use your voice assistants for that, because it can pretty much integrate all of them. So for this part of the video, just to go through the features and sort of summarize, I'm going to use the all internal deck from LinknLink that I received in order to give me a good overview of this. And actually it did help me a lot, because as I said, it feels a little bit overwhelming with all the different features and the screens and everything, because it does a lot. And this is definitely a new device, which is, as you can see, it's marketed as a home assistant server, just to compete with, for example, Home Assistant Green and some of the other options, because it does offer a lot more functionality. But this is not the first product they have released, because actually there was a more expensive version of this iSG, or Intelligent Super Gateway, which was paired with a screen. So now what we get here is just a box without a screen. But it seems, looking at the reviews for the the wall version, the screen version, it has the same software functions, but it's just missing the screen, in case you don't need the screen, or you just want to save money by getting this cheaper as opposed to the screen version, which was around, if I remember, 200. Maybe I'm just going to include the screen a picture here how much that is sold at the moment. So in quick summary here, we can see that all the different sort of like ecosystems and products that they support. Primarily the way to look at it, this is obviously a Wi-Fi box, so it supports a lot of different products that are Wi-Fi enabled. Obviously all the LinknLink products, like temperature sensors, motion sensors, radar sensors, but it has two USB ports, and the model that I've got has a Zigbee receiver. So obviously it can be used as a Zigbee hub, but you can buy a Z-Wave USB receiver as well, so it can be as a Z-Wave hub, and it also supports Matter, so Matter over Wi-Fi. And besides that, you see that, obviously you can import webcams, and then you can also run additional applications on this device. So namely, obviously, Home Assistant I already mentioned, but you can also, Zigbee2MQTT is already installed. You can install, for example, Node-RED on it. And you can also use it to install some other applications. So for example, you can install the EV-Link application or the Reolink application, but they are actually just going to be the Android applications running on this device, which I think would make sense when you buy the display version. But this one without a display, I don't think it's that useful as a product that would run your Android application. So you can use this to control them instead of your phone, because it does have a HDMI output, so you can connect it to a TV. But in most cases, that is not as convenient as having a touch screen interface of your phone. I've already mentioned some of the add-ons already, and in order to put this into perspective, you can see that you have this big box which has two main features. There is the home, smart home gateway features that runs their own iSG software, which we are going to look. So that provides its own UI, its own scene, automation functionalities that you can use on top of Home Assistant. And then you have the entire Home Assistant stack, and then you also have some add-ons. Android apps, AI agents that we are going to talk a little bit later on. You can also use these as a signage display. So if you have a storefront, you can just use it to, like preload pictures, and you can use it as an image carousel that shows images and videos for your storefront. And of course, because it's like an Android-based computer which has an HDMI output, you can hook it up to the TV, and it also comes with a remote, so you can use it to watch Netflix and a few other streaming services, which you can certainly do. I would probably not use it for that particular purpose, but if you are going to install it in a way where you can easily hook up with the TV, you might as well do it. You also receive a remote for that. And there are a lot of different ways how you can interact with the device. So obviously, as I mentioned, the earlier model, which has a screen, is now replaced with an HDMI output, so you can hook it up with a TV. I am going to hook it up with a HDMI USB-C monitor, which also receives HDMI. As I said, because it's just an HDMI output, you are not going to have any of the touch functionality, so you can also connect to a mouse. So you can certainly do that like a small computer, but it's not the same touch functionality as the the display product or like a phone app. The second option is that it has a web, so you can control it through the web. There is the LinknLink mobile application that you can also use to access some of the devices that are connected to it, and then, for example, start some of the signage functionality. So start a playlist and it starts showing a series of pictures and videos for like store display. And you can also use the built-in AI chatbot feature, which is not entirely an AI chatbot inside. It's more like an integration between Telegram and OpenAI ChatGPT. Of course, it supports all your favorite voice assistants, so Google Home, Alexa, and Apple Home compatible as well. And that goes back to the use case that I have in mind for this particular device. And as I said, there is a control, like a small infrared or BLE control for that. So the new feature for this box version, the SE version, instead of the WoW version, is you are not getting a screen, but you are getting a remote that you can pair with this device, and that will allow you to use it for the navigation. For simplicity purposes, I just hooked up a mouse to it because it's just easier to control. Navigating a graphical menu with a keyboard or like a pointer is not that easy. But again, you have the options, the buttons on that to launch like YouTube or Netflix or Amazon Prime, so you can use it as a media streaming device quite easily. I quite like the option for the web interface because that gives you another possibility instead of using the TV output. So if you plan to install it in a place where it's not going to be close to the TV, then you can just use the built-in website to access some of the common features. It wouldn't have all the features, but it would have the most important features to access your devices and scenes and automations and then make changes to them. So if you want to use it especially for like a local home controller and then make changes to those settings, then you can use the web interface for that. And the mobile option that you can see here at the sort of like the lower part of the screen, that shows you the mobile, that also I'm going to show you a little bit later on. And finally, that's the AI chat feature. I looked at this one. There is a really good documentation how to set this up. It needs a couple of steps that needs to be taken, but as I said, it doesn't use a built-in AI or an LLM model. Basically, this is just a very good integration between Telegram and ChatGPT in order to understand what you are typing, and then from the instructions that you typed, it is able to extract information what is relevant for your smart home functions. Like if you mention the intent that you want to operate lights or something, or you want to query a device and what the device name, it's able to translate that and then use the built-in smart home functionality to, like, for example, operate lights, brightnesses. So it is actually very good. So this is the sort of functionality which I think we are getting with the new, Alexa firmware, where you can enable the, the LLM functionality as opposed to the older assistant version. So you have, you have a different way of, turning on lights and operating smart home devices, which for one, I think it could be more natural for a new user. For an existing user, it probably needs a little bit of training, getting used to how you talk to your sort of like, instead of assistant, you talk to your LLM in order to operate your house. I think this would be a really good feature for people who are trying to use these, smart home systems in languages that are usually not supported by the voice assistants. So my mother tongue is Hungarian. None of the voice assistants support Hungarian language at the moment. I mean, of course, if you speak Spanish or German, then you are much lucky, because obviously English, because those languages are supported. But for smaller languages, this could be a really good option, because you can just type in your own language what you want to do, and your smart home stuff is going to do that. So there is a couple of, there is an example here that you can see on the right, where it's very easy to combine multiple commands into one simple instructions, how you would normally phrase it in your in natural language, and the system is able to integrate that. As I said, I haven't tested this functionality out, mostly because once I started reading through the documentation, I realized that I have to create, I have to get my ChatGPT or OpenAI API key, which means that you have to sign up for OpenAI, you have to create an account, and you also have to put some credit onto that account, because although you can use ChatGPT for free for certain amounts, but once you start using the API, it is definitely on a cost basis. So it doesn't have to be necessarily a lot of money, but you have to at least either sign up for a monthly subscription, or you can still remain as a free user, but you have to put some credit on your account. So then that credit can be used against these API calls. I already mentioned about the features of the voice assistant and also the remote. Again, I have set it up for my Google Home. I created the link between Google Home and this box, and obviously my devices are getting synced over to Google Home so I can see them. And also I set up the Apple Home integration as well. And again, I can see all my devices in my Apple Home app, and I can control them from my Apple device as well. So that's definitely working. And of course, the big selling point is the integration with Home Assistant. And what I really like about this integration is that it is so tight. So if I add a new device to iSG, because for example, you can see, and I'm also going to show you, but you can see on this small screen that you can add like Matter and Zigbee or Z-Wave devices, and you can also add a lot of other devices that are supported. And once you do that, it automatically appears in your Home Assistant. And also, if you add something in Home Assistant, then it automatically appears in your iSG. I think it is a little bit sort of like difficult to understand this duality between the two systems, but there is a lot of functionality that the iSG in the built-in interface supports. So you can create your own screens, again, which makes more sense if you buy the display version of this product. And you can also create scenes, and you can also create automations. And of course, you can also do them in Home Assistant as well. But I think this product gives you the option to, let's say, if you are a beginner user, you can start using the built-in software for it, because it has a somewhat simpler interface, but it still allows you to create the most typical tasks like simple scenes and if-then automations. But then once you become more experienced, then maybe you want to shift over to Home Assistant. But with this, you don't really have to decide upfront, because you can have access to your devices in both systems at the same time. So it's really up to you where you start. Maybe it just gets a little bit more complicated over time, that you might have some features that are created and executed by Home Assistant, and some of them are executed by the iSG. But that's something that you have to remember. And finally, the media center options. I don't tend to give this too much thought, mostly because I think nowadays we are living in a world where basically every TV is a smart TV, so you don't need a separate device to watch YouTube or Netflix. I would most probably use this device and the HDMI outputs to maybe some sort of monitor that I can occasionally use to make changes to the iSG setup. So I just find it much easier to plug it into like a mobile screen or like a second screen, and then do the the setup quickly there, than using the web interface or the mobile interface, because obviously you get more screens, it's a little bit quicker, and I mean, to be honest, I quite like the user interface. I think it looks pretty nice. I did definitely put some effort to make this whole user interface nice for the display product. And of course, you have these digital signage functions, which maybe can be used if you have a small store and you want this device to be connected to a screen. So it just plays various images promoting your products or even videos, and you can manage these different playlists from your phone as well. So you can easily change these images over the phone. It's showing menus or products. You can just mix and match them, create different playlists, and then just start them in the start of the day when you open your store. So I think there are quite a few different use cases for that as well, but that's not something that I have a lot of experience, so I just want to just mention it, and you can make up your mind whether that's something that you are interested in using for your own business. Okay, so for the next segment, I want to show you the device itself, which is already powered up and connected. So I'm not going to show you an awful lot, but as you can see, it's a relatively small box, so it feels like one of these newer Android-based set-top boxes, which don't really weigh much. It's not really a lot of, like a big device. And as you can see on the top, we have a power cable. So there is a power adapter provided. There is an HDMI output. There is a network jack, so Ethernet connection, but it also supports Wi-Fi. There are a couple of USB ports. Well, two USB ports on the side, and this one is the Zigbee dongle, so that's the Zigbee coordinator, and that's the USB. That's a wireless mouse, because I just find it easier to use the mouse instead of basically the arrows on the remote, and that's it. You have some infrared LEDs for the remote, and that's pretty much it. So the box is really small. I don't think it's really designed to be out in the on the public. Maybe if you really want to use the remote control, then I would put it in like in a cabinet under the TV, so it can still receive the infrared signal. But the application that I have in mind is more like a smart home controller. So I think it's more going to live in a electrical cabinet where your router or some of the other devices live. So it doesn't necessarily use, probably just going to be connected to power, Ethernet, and of course the Zigbee hub. But then occasionally it would be nice to also access the the HDMI port to have access to this screen. So here I'm going to use the screen. As you can see, the mouse is supported. Oh, before I start going there, and that's the remote that you get. So you get a couple of different buttons. You actually get a Google Assistant button as well. And as I said, a couple of streaming services you can directly access, and it launches those apps respectively. And yeah, you can watch Netflix, Prime Video, YouTube on this, but that's again not something that I'm really interested in. On the main screen, when you open this device, you get this user interface, which that's what I refer to as the iSG interface, and it has a couple of main tabs, which is namely this Home tab, where you can create multiple different dashboards. And you can place applications, and you can also place devices onto these dashboards. And as you can see, it has a couple of weather widgets. It has a widget for my one of my camera, which it takes a little bit of time to load. And it also has a couple of sensors that I was able to import over Home Assistant. And that's a clock widget. And yeah, you can create many of these widgets. You can move apps around, you can move devices around. It's a fairly simple interface. It doesn't take a lot of time to get used to it. And the general layout is that you get a preview for all the devices, and when you click on it, there is a submenu which opens. So if this would be a switch, I would be able to control the switch from this sub screen. If I go to the next one, it's the devices. So this is where you're going to see all your different devices. And so I have, some sensors here. So this is, for example, a sort of Zigbee temperature and humidity sensor. Here I have a switch which says it's offline, but actually I can operate it. Maybe you can hear the click because it's just that way. So it says offline, but actually it's offline online, so there is no issues with that. And this is just for example, a Shelly 3EM that I have set up in my house for a long time, and that's connected to MQTT, but through the MQTT connection, Home Assistant was able to find this as a Shelly device, and I could bring these metrics over from Home Assistant. So that's how complicated this connection might work, but it actually works. So you can just move devices to whichever system, Home Assistant or that, and it just works. You can also create groups. I haven't done that. And you can also create scenes. So these are like, I haven't created any. So, you click a scene and a bunch of lights turn off and on, change colors and brightnesses, that sort of stuff. You also have an energy screen, which, I just wanted to show you how it potentially looks like, because I don't have all the necessary sensors and infrastructure in order to set this up, because it asks for all sorts of metering devices that going to collect your, the home use or the battery use or the low carbon, so solar generation. I don't have sensors set up that way, so I just started assigning random sensors for this diagram to show up. But I think it just gives you an idea, which is very similar to how you can create this energy overview in Home Assistant as well. But you have a nice display here, which pretty much does the same. And the next option is automations, and that's where I said that you can create these very simple automations. The UI feels very much like how you can set up stuff in Tuya. So if the device is in a certain state, for example, temperature is above or raises or drops below. Some of these screen controls are a little bit, on top of each other. But that's how you can, set up a simple automation to, let's say, if the temperature for this temperature sensor is more than 20 degrees for more than one, minute, and then I need to do an action which turn on a certain device. For example, this switch, I need to turn it on. And simple if then, and also there is a condition option, which again, I would say that it probably fulfills like, 80 or 90% of the requirements. Actually, I don't want to save this one now. So that's what you can set up in automation. That's why I said it's definitely something that you can do in Home Assistant as well. I think there are more options, definitely a lot more options in Home Assistant. But if you want a simpler interface to understand, it's right here and you can do it. And this is local control as well. And the next one is the media. So here you have like a media application that you can play media files that are on this device or plugged to the USB port, so you can use it as a media server as well, or you can install additional applications like Bubble UPnP that can play media files from a NAS server, or you can also use Spotify. And these are actually going to be Android applications that you install and run on this Android hardware, because at the end this is just an Android hardware which runs this special front-end OS which IGS created for us. And then we have add-ons. So that's where you can enable and also install additional add-ons. And most of these add-ons are pre-installed when you buy this device. So for example, this APK Pure, that's the application which manages the different packages. But the Home Assistant that is also enabled by default. There is also an MQTT broker running on this machine, which then is configured for the Zigbee2MQTT. And I, again, quite like this setup because it's Zigbee2MQTT is installed on it, and I would assume that it is responsible for, talking to the Zigbee unit, but then that same Zigbee unit can be used in Home Assistant through Zigbee2MQTT, and it can be used by iSG as a Zigbee device, or as a Zigbee hub as well. So again, it doesn't really matter where you try to add a device. You will be able to find in both systems anyway. So for example, the temperature and humidity sensor, I assigned it to the iSG, and later on I was able to bring it over to Home Assistant. You can do Z-Wave as well. MQTT Broker, there is a built-in Microsoft Edge browser for some of the functions, the file manager, energy management. The other set of programs, so for example, you could see EV-Link, you can see here Akara and the Broadlink. Those are actually the respective Android applications that you can install and run on this, but it's just an application running on this device. It's not going to integrate into the iSG. So that's why I didn't want to spend more time on it. One thing which wasn't mentioned right in the beginning of the deck, maybe I just skipped it, that there is also 2 VPN options installed. So the 0 tier 1 and also Tailscale, and that allows you to access your iSG if you are outside the network. So you can subscribe to the Nabucasa, which gives you remote access, so you will be able to access your device. That's just a screensaver coming on every time. But then that has a monthly fee. But if you install any of these VPN options, then you can access your device free using either the 0 tier VPN or the Tailscale. So that's definitely a plus if you consider the, everything what it costs to own and operate this device. And then you can see some of the other things that you can install here. There is a Matter server, which, I haven't installed this particular Matter server, but I was able to, link a Matter device to this already. So that's working fine. And you can also use this as a Matter bridge. But I think because we have Home Assistant, I don't think you would really need that. Probably you can do whatever you want through Home Assistant as what you would be able to do through a Matter bridge as well. And finally, you have some settings, and these are the actual, system settings. So some configurations, some of the settings for the local Home Assistant server, MQTT connection, so it can connect to other MQTT, which is not running on this system. Custom background, it's just you can change the background of this screen, and then that's the HomeKit integration. So you can link the iSG and the devices that iSG sees to HomeKit, but you can do the same from Home Assistant as well. The locker screen, that's basically the screensaver, and this is the third-party services, so Alexa and Google Home, but it actually just tells you how to set up the link between between them in the respective Alexa or Google Home app, and that's how you can get those devices, and you can get voice control for them in these systems. And there are a couple of other things here. Probably the other thing which we are going to mention in this, your home account. So that's how you link the iSG to your LinknLink account, which is running on your mobile. And since I'm talking about the mobile app, let me just launch this. And what you would notice is that your iSG as a device would appear here in your mobile app. And when I go into this, then I have a couple of options here, like I can see the IP, but on the main screen, I also have a separate iSG on the lower part of the screen. So this is where I have access to all the devices that are configured here. So you can see the temperature and the humidity sensor, which still has the old name here. You have the street camera, and then all the the energy monitoring devices. And if I go into that, it shows the same information as we have seen on the screen. It has cards for the temperature and humidity, but not for the energy consumption. And also it has this media center option as well. And that's where I said about the digital signage functions, because I uploaded a couple of, images. I created a playlist, and if I click on play, then it starts, showing those images on the screen. So that's sort of the digital signage function that you can configure. You can configure the screensaver also to start rotating images, but with this you can manage your media here, and then you can create playlist, and you can configure how those which playlist to play. So you can preload some of the images, create playlists for, I don't know, maybe different days, or as the season changes you have different playlists. And within the playlist you can also specify which images to play, how long to keep each images, and it just keep rotating them. So that's also useful functions. Again, not something that I would personally use, but might consider if I would have a business and a storefront, or use it inside a store. And also one thing I haven't mentioned is you can use the right mouse button as a back button. So if you want to go back, so for example, I wanted to escape from the this media carousel, I just had to click on the right mouse button, and I'm back on the main screen. I mean, as you can see, I haven't really touched all the different functions here, but I wanted to show you most of the, the functionality here. Yeah, there is a lot of stuff here, especially if you consider the things that are in the settings and also under the add-on menu. And I'm going to jump into Home Assistant soon, but before that, I want to show you something else. If I go back to devices, and actually there is a plus button, it just doesn't show on the screen. So if I click on that plus button, this is how I can add new devices to my iSG. So first of all, there is Wi-Fi, and there is a couple of options here. So this one is called LinknLink. So these are the LinknLink devices. But here you can see Tuya. It actually can link to your devices directly locally without adding them to the into the Tuya app. So any Tuya device that you buy, for example a light switch, a smart socket, you can assign, you can click here, you click on this button, you specify what type of device it is. So it's lights, outlet switches, door sensors, motion sensors, aircon, temperature, humidity, camera, and curtain and shade. So most of the, I would say probably basic device types it supports. And then you get the device into pairing mode, and it will be added locally to the iSG. And of course, then you can bring it over to Home Assistant. So it's almost like a complete local Tuya support built into iSG. I think that's quite remarkable. And also you can do Govi. And then if you look at apps, then you have all these different apps like, Shelly, Tapo, TP-Link, that you can also use to bring devices over from these applications. So that's a lot. And Zigbee, it's like, your Zigbee hub and the Zigbee coordinator. So if I would have another Zigbee device, if I put it into pairing mode, it will start appearing here. So it's just using the Zigbee, the built-in Zigbee hub, or well, the USB Zigbee hub, which is added to this device. And also you can have the same with Z-Wave, but Z-Wave is, the service is not started and I don't have the hardware dongle for it, but I would assume that it works very similar to the Zigbee. And you also have Matter, so you just click on this IoT, and at the moment there is only support for lights and outlets and switches. And I just recently reviewed a Matter compatible thermostat. So obviously this is a new device type actually a fairly recent device type in Matter that's not supported. But I think with these two types we would be supported for probably like hundreds of thousands of different devices. And then the screensaver just came on again. Okay, the next one is Home Assistant. So this is the part where you can bring stuff over from Home Assistant into iSG. Again, the only reason you want to use this because let's say you want to control them from your LinknLink application, or you want to create scenes and automations within iSG, because otherwise you can just do the whole stuff in Home Assistant as well. But for example, you can see stuff here which says DS223. So that's my Synology DS223 NAS that I have at home, and Home Assistant is able to see that through the Synology integration which is in Home Assistant. But now I can bring all these devices, all these entities over from Home Assistant. So again, everything that you create there or it's available, it's visible here. So that's again, it's a pretty good integration, very tight integration between this iSG and Home Assistant. And you can also do webcams. So I can put like an RTSP stream, RTSP stream over here, and that's how I imported the camera that you have seen a couple of minutes ago. You can also import infrared and RF devices, and you also have this IBG option, which, to be honest, that's the that's the only thing I don't know anything about, and I don't own any of these devices. So yeah, that's pretty impressive. And then now switching over to Home Assistant, I have to use a different mouse, and now you can see this is the Home Assistant which is running on the iSG box. So that's the local IP and :8123. That's the Home Assistant. And by the way, the Home Assistant and the Node-RED add-on and Zigbee2MQTT are running inside Linux containers on this on the iSG box. So they are not an Android port or an Android version of those applications, but they are the, you know, the actual Linux, let's say, distribution running in a container inside the Android box. So that's the, I mean, that's, you know, usual Home Assistant. There's nothing special about that. And I haven't really touched anything, I mean, obviously, other than adding the devices, how it was installed. So it comes pre-installed with Home Assistant, you know, the community store, the community store and the file editor and, you know, logbook and everything. To-do list was already here as I had opened it. By the way, very important information. When you launch the Home Assistant on this, it is already configured with the default credentials of admin. So password is as user ID is admin and the password is admin as well. That's what I'm using as well at the moment. So you know, once you log in for the first time, you might want to update the admin password. All I have done, to be honest, is I've gone into, oh, there's no notifications. I've gone into the devices and integrations, and, you know, some of the devices got automatically discovered. So I just started adding those into the, into my, you know, overview, sorry, my devices and into the screen. I haven't done any very nice configuration. I mean, for me, it's more like a test device at the moment, and just playing around with it. But as you can see, this is the humidity and the temperature sensor, the Sonoff temperature sensor that I sync to the iSG and I brought over to Home Assistant. That's the 3-phase Shelly energy meter, which was imported through the Shelly integration. And you know, all the Synology stuff that you can see here, some weather forecast, and I also added a, you know, the living TV. That comes through the Android TV integration. But then there is two interesting stuff. So first of all, okay, there is this switch here, which that's the Matter switch. But there is this switch here, which is one says IGC screen, and I can use this to actually turn off the screen on the which comes through the HDMI output of the iSG. So I can, you know, control the iSG from Home Assistant. So you can see here, I can reboot it, I can turn the screen on, and actually there is one more very interesting function there. The camera, which I configured through the RSTP stream, is also appearing here. And when I press this, the feed appears on the screen. So actually I thought, oh, you know what, this is a really good function, because let's say you don't want to use the HDMI output, you will use the other functions. Oh, by the way, the audio is also coming through this screen. But then you can use this to, let's say somebody rings your doorbell, there is a camera which is pointed to the to your door, or, you know, just outside your house, and then you can initiate this event from Home Assistant, and it's going to bring on the camera feed onto the display. So you can have, you know, whatever cheap display maybe in your kitchen or your study, and then it will automatically come on and then bring the feed whenever somebody presses the doorbell. And then once you don't need that, maybe with a timer, then you can just do this and the screen goes off. Yeah. And then you can turn it back on, and then the feed comes back on. I don't know how to, you know, because now I can use the mouse to exit out of this screen, so it comes back to the main screen, which is the screensaver, or I can go back to the main screen. I don't know how I can make the iSG to get out of the cam feed, but you can just turn the output off, and then it's fine. And I think if you turn the output off, but then you press this one, then I think will the screen come on? No, actually it doesn't. Anyway, so yeah. you can turn it back on. I hope I didn't break it. No, I didn't. Oh, it's back on. The feed is back on. It's just jumbled at the moment. So anyway, yeah, you can play around with this, this toggle to turn the output on and off, and also the this event to start a feed to a camera. I think this is really cool. I just tumbled this on by accident, but I think it's such a good feature because I recently reviewed an Anchor IP solution which comes with a camera, and I really like these functions that if a motion is detected, then the screen just comes on and then it shows me the what the camera sees. I don't have to open an app. I wait for the app to load, the stream to start, but it's pretty much the same functionalities here. So this is really good. And I think finally, let me talk about the use case that I have in mind for this product. So a friend of mine is moving into a new house. Well, they are doing a major renovation to an existing house. And as part of that renovation, he has rewired the entire house. And he had one specific requirements to, when it comes to smart home. He wants to be able to control all his lights from the phone. Or at least he wants to be able to control, to have certain control or functionality over, automatically turning certain lights off. Maybe in the future also link some of the lights to motions and presence sensors, and also have the ability to turn, let's say, all the lights off, or lights on the upper floor, on the ground floor off with a single button. And we were thinking about okay, how we can do this, which is he can do all these functions step by step, so he doesn't have to create a full-blown integrated smart home solution right from the beginning, because he has a lot of other stuff with the renovation itself, and all the other things which comes into like heating and installations and floors and paints and everything. So we go into the directions there. He has a couple of Riftec PLCs, and they are fairly affordable and very modular PLCs that you can easily program using a like a function block diagram. And it is not a powerful PLC, but it's certainly enough to handle basic functions like turning lights on, starting timers, and at the end of the timer, turning stuff off. So what we decided that he's going to wire all the light switches into this PLC, and then all the lights will be controlled by outputs from this PLC. And with this, it's going to be like a self-contained functionality. Like the PLC is only going to be responsible for controlling the lights, at least for the time being. And we are going to attach the sort of like the smarter features, remote access and phone apps later on. So, but what I was able to do with this setup is I have the Riftec PLC, which is controlling all the lights. I'm going to give this unit to him, and this already has Home Assistant on it, and I can configure all the PLC outputs in Home Assistant using the Modbus integration. And actually, let me show you, because I've already tested this. So in the configuration.yaml, you can create a Modbus section. So this is not something that you can auto discover with an add-on, but you actually have to manually type this in. So this PLC supports Modbus over TCP. So that's the current IP, that's the port at the moment. And I have, for the testing purposes, I've configured one single output, which is, it's called the Riftec Coil 1, and it's a coil type, and it's in address 1 and then a slave 1. And it's only going to be one slave. And yeah, that's it. And once you do this configuration, then in your Home Assistant, a new output is going to be displayed. So this is the Riftec Coil 1. Of course, we will rename this once we know which actual light this is going to be connected to that. And I have used the integration, which, when you start Home Assistant, you would have a notification here to link your Home Assistant to your Apple device, pretty much like how you get a QR code in the iSG, which I showed you a couple of minutes ago, how you can link it to Apple Home. And now that very same device is available in Apple Home as well. So you can see it here. It's called the Riftec Coil 1. And I can turn it on and off. And I'm going to include a video here because I've already disassembled the PLC. It's not powered up at the moment, but I can control it from your Apple phone, which goes into the Home Assistant running on the iSG, and then using the Modbus integration, it can control the PLC, which then turns the lights on. And this is all working locally, and it's working wonderfully. So obviously there is going to be a lot of manual configuration here. But let's say we are talking about, I don't know, 40, maybe 60 outputs. I can easily copy and paste these and just make sure that I have the correct address type. And this one also monitors the output, so the communication works both ways. So if I turn on the lights using the physical light switch, then the status would update in Home Assistant as well, and also on the Apple Home app. And vice versa. So obviously when you modify it in the Apple Home, the information comes through and then the light is going to be turned on and off using the PLC. So that's going to be the use case for this particular device in my case, and I'm really happy that I'm able to use this relatively small, small basically block. It doesn't take a lot of space. I don't even have to buy a Raspberry Pi and install everything. You just get this out of the box, you plug it in, and basically it's like the USB connection and the network and power, and that's it. You plug this in and technically it's up and running. The Home Assistant is already installed. You log in, you start configuring, and you are ready to go in relatively no time at all. So if you are interested in something similar and you think you would also be able to use at least some of the functionality from the vast selection of functions and features of this LinknLink iSG box, then there are going to be affiliated links in the video description below. But that's going to be all for today. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one.